we are going to install the Painless cable control conversion kit for the Mokai ES-Kape 2.0. Alright, to start with, first thing you want to do, move your steering all the way to the left and then turn the key off. That will lock the actuator in the park position and allow you to remove it later when we unbolt everything. Alright, installing the kit. If you're going to reuse the harness, leave it plugged in. Just move it out of the way because we will be removing the mount block. But first what we're going to do is we're going to remove this flotation tank with the fire extinguisher, and we're going to relocate it to the left side of the boat. Alright, we can set that aside. Now we can work on the left side. Now we have that tank out of the way, we can install the fire extinguisher on that side now. All right. Now we're going to take the two 1/4-28 button head screws included in the kit and just screw those back into the holes to seal those up. Alright, next step, we're going to remove the anchor block for the ignition box. If you plan on retaining the ignition box, hang on to these screws so you can remount this block after the installation is complete. Now if you have this sticker, give it a good pull off there. If you want to mount it somewhere else, there you go. Now we'll be using the template to mark out our holes. Alright, you'll notice on the template you have two holes up here. Those correspond with the heads of those bolts. So line up the head bolts, get the steering slot parallel with the hull. Now granted, you do have some flexibility. This isn't a fixed position. The bracket can be moved forward or backward depending on your arm length or whatever, as long as you don't go past this bolt here, because this is where the brace is on the inside. You will run out of room. So you do have some wiggle room. Now I like it right here. That's usually where most people are going to find it comfortable. So that's where we're going to do this one. So you'll start out with taking a Sharpie marker and you will mark your holes. Alright, now your holes are marked. Alright, now what I like to do, I like to take a torch and I will heat up the end, and I will mark each hole. That way when I drill, I don't have to worry about it drifting and being inaccurate. We want all these holes to line up. Everything goes easier when things line up right. Alright, now you can use a drill bit. I use a countersink. I like those screws. The screws in the kit are little button head screws, so just a regular hole is fine. Now we're going to drill a hole so we can use the jigsaw to cut out the slot. Alright, now we're going to clean up our edge. Now we can install the trim. All right. Work that in there and get it all good and lined up, and there you have your steering slot trim. You're going to want to unclamp the throttle cable assembly, and you're going to need the bracket, and you want to unclip your throttle pivot linkage. And we will take these two things over to the motor. Alright, using a Phillips screwdriver, we will loosen and remove all of the servo mounting screws. Don't lose them, set them to the side. We will be using them to mount the new linkage. Alright, use a pair of pliers to grab the spring and unhook it from the governor arm. Use some snippers here. We got a zip tie to uncut, and then just unplug your servo. Got a little tab there, just push that, unplug it, and leave that hang to the side. You won't need that anymore. Alright, now you want to take the regulator bolts loose. And take your cable clamp and just slide it right up underneath there. Line the bolts up and tighten those back up again. Now we have the linkage pivot. Now this screw here is a stop. You want to take the spring that was on your servo and you want to put it you want to put your spring in this second hole. You want the opened end down. Now with those pair of pliers you had, reach under, grab that spring, and you want to bring it back up, and you want to put it in that first hole. Alright, use those screws to put your mounting block to the motor. Alright, and tighten the screws up. Don't get crazy with it. They aren't going anywhere. Definitely give them a good snug. Alright, now you have throttle. Motor is now complete. That we are going to remove the steering actuator, as that will no longer be needed. And you're gonna have to get some snippers or something and cut the zip ties that hold the cable in place. So now your cable's free. All right, now that we have the bolts out, we can slide the actuator back, tilt it to its side, and it will slide right out the back. All right, now we're going to take the steering cable and we're going to install it. First of all, we're going to remove the clips from each end. Note the one side has a flattened edge on either side. The side going to the cockpit has a rounded edge, so keep those separated so they go on the corresponding end. You want to unwrap it. You want to slide the cockpit side through the hull, and you want to slide the transom side through the old actuator hole till it bottoms out, and take your pin and install it. Now you want to take your cable clamp and, beginning with the hull, come halfway down and drill a hole for a cable clamp. Now I've already done that, so we're just going to install the clamp now. Alright, cable is installed. Now we can move on to the cockpit installation. Your hardware, slide the screws down in the holes that you've drilled already. Now take your assembly and slide it up, engaging those screws. Take your nuts and get it started there. Once you got a couple nuts started, just work your way around till you have everything finger started there. Alright, now everything's tight. We can now bend the steering cable around, get it to go in the hole. Now you can get your other pin that you set aside and you can install that. Take your cable end and quick release. And I've left all this loose so you can make any kind of final adjustments for steering throw and end points. So engage the steering. There's your steering. Your throttle cable and unwrap it or uncoil it. And you can route that up behind the steering cable. And through the same hole that you routed the steering cable in the hull. And here is your throttle cable ready to hook up to the motor. Now we can install the motor. Once your motor is installed, you can take your throttle cable, and again I've left this loose for any kind of final adjustments, but clip that on the ball end, slide that down to the clamp, engage the lever. Now you have throttle. Next we're going to deal with the steering pivot on the pump nozzle. Remove the factory bolt. You won't be using that anymore. Remove the linkage rod from the pivot. You won't need the rod anymore. Now, on into your steering cable, you will note there's this little bushing threaded onto the end of the cable. That is an adapter that you screw into the pivot. You're not tightening this up, you're just going down to its flush. That onto the steering cable. That doesn't have to be really tight either. We're just finger tight is all you need to do, because if you ever want to nest this boat, you're going to have to unscrew this from the cable to slide it back through again. So hands free, or hand tight is best, and it can come loose while you're on the river, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, now the quick release pin that you had previously to the actuator, you now use in the nozzle. This customer used this particular style, so. But that's pretty much it. You have complete manual controls now that are quick release. When you nest the boat, you want to take the clip out the back, pull the cable back inside. You can pull the cable out there, pull it back into the engine compartment, and just coil it up in there. You don't have to remove the clamp. The cable stays in the engine compartment. And then the throttle, obviously, gets pulled back into the cockpit. So. Alright, now if you're going to install your wiring again, I have not installed this anywhere, and on this particular boat, customer is getting my ignition control box. With my box, you have direct wiring from the box to the engine. You have no wiring harness, pins to worry about corrosion problems there. You don't have to worry about a connection to one of the ECU. You don't have to worry about connection from the ECU to the motor. So I've eliminated dozens of points of failure by getting rid of all that mess. And the ECU has failed a couple times with some people, and people have lost power, so left them dead in the water. So just eliminate all that, keep it simple. We have my box, we have simple ignition, you have key on, that powers the fuel pump. We have an auxiliary switch, which is always powered. So if you turn the motor off and you leave that switch on, that power is still going. So you have GPS or something, you don't have to worry about that shutting off. If you have a bilge pump running and you shut the motor off, that would still be running. So, and then you have 12 volts here, which is protected by a breaker. So, simple box, gets rid of a lot of problems, and it's a lot cleaner. You don't have to worry about some joystick thing hanging out. And you have buttons and switches and everything that makes sense and you can see. So, all right, well. All right, the throttle handle, you have a friction thumb screw down here. You tighten that up and the throttle will stay where you put it. You have cruise control, so you can basically just drive that manually, or you could loosen it up. If you loosen it up, then everything will come back by itself when the motor's running, because the governor is the return spring on this. So I always leave it a little bit stiff. I don't like holding the throttle. I like full throttle and let go and hands free. So, mount the ignition somewhere here. That's for y'all to figure out. I'm not messing with this thing. Don't like it, not gonna use it. And but there's your steering kit. Enjoy.